ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। नमस्कार मेरे प्यारे दोस्तों, माय डियर फ्रेंड्स. In this video, I am going to describe Anandmaya Kosha, Bliss Sheath. The next personality layer, the Bliss Sheath, is taken up for discussion from the following verse. Verse number 207. आनंद प्रतिबिंब चुंबित व्यक्ति मोजरिस बता शादा आनंद में प्रियादि गुणकः स्वेष्ठा थला भोदय पुण्य श्यानो भवे विभाति कीर्ति नाम आनंद रूप स्वयं सर्वोदनंति यत्र साधु तनु ब्रह्मांत्रम प्रियतनम बिना. The Anandmaya Kosha, Bliss Sheath, is that modification of nescience which is kissed by a reflection of the Atman, which is bliss absolute. Pleasure, etc., are its attributes, and it springs into expression when an object agreeable to it presents itself. The fortunate feel it spontaneously when the fruits of their good actions manifest. Every being without the least effort derives great joy from it. Now the Anandmaya Kosha is being described. Anandmaya Kosha is also a vritti, a mental disturbance. Vritti means thought. Even during deep sleep, there are thought waves. The prana, the mind, and the intellect are annihilated or transcended. During actual moments of samadhi, there are no physiological functions in the physical body. Clinically, one is supposed to be dead. Sri Aurobindo's and Swami Paramahansa Yogananda's bodies were kept for some days after their Mahasamadhi with the expectation that they would come back. When the body starts rotting, it is disposed of. When one is in Samadhi, it is God's and nature's job to protect it. If one's karma with the body is not finished, it will be protected and preserved by nature for one's future use. Samadhi is a state wherein all thought waves have totally stopped. Deep sleep is not samadhi. During deep sleep, there are yet subtle vrittis in the intellect. These vrittis can be said to be bliss thoughts, ananda vritti. Happiness experienced in a man's bosom is inversely proportional to the amount of agitation in his mind. Ordinarily, we are used to the endless stress and strain in our daily life. That moment in our life when our agitations are comparatively less is a relatively happy moment. So, the happiest moment is that in which there are but negligible agitations in our bosom. These small thought waves are said to be bliss thoughts. At these moments, the bliss of infinitude is tasted a little. Sankara, in his poetic exuberance, says the ripples of thought waves arising out of tamas in our mind kiss the reflection of the bliss of infinitude. This is the characteristics of the Anandmaya Kosha. From the non-apprehension of reality, soft ripples of thoughts arise in the mind, and when these ripples are kissed by meaning, illumined by the light of divine bliss, it is called Anandmaya Kosha. Even during our waking state, we sometimes experience this bliss sheath. Depending upon our relationship with the object of our liking, we feel different degrees of happiness. They are Priya, Moda, and Parmoda. Priya, Moda, and Pramoda are different degrees of happiness experienced when we come in different degrees of contact with the objects of our liking. When we are near an object of pleasure or contemplating upon it, we feel happy. A lover sitting in his home and thinking of his beloved feels happy. Though the beloved is far away, to think of the beloved is happiness. In English, we may call this pleasurable emotion felt in the bosom as pleasure, Priya. When the beloved, the object of our liking, is in front of us, the pleasure is intensified, and that intensified pleasure is called moda. In English, let us call it joy. And when we are actually indulging in or enjoying, when the object of our pleasure is in our possession, that pleasure is naturally most intensified. This maximum intensity of joy is called parmoda. Again in English, let us call it ecstasy. The happiness that is illumined by the light of supreme bliss is of the nature of pleasure, joy, and ecstasy, Priya, Moda, and Parmoda. At such moments, we are in the Anandmaya Kosha. These joys can be experienced in relation to an object of pleasure when we consider that the pleasure is in the object. This is possible only when we are ignorant of Brahma, the reality, that is when we are in avidya. At times in our life we feel happy without any reason. This is due to the noble vasanas created in us due to our past meritorious actions. Merit, punya, and sin, papa, are determined by the condition and the type of vasanas in us. The vasanas that create more and more agitations in the bosom are termed as papa, and those creating peace and serenity in the mind are called punya. When there are more and more such noble vasanas in an individual, the condition of his mind will become more and more serene. When there is more calmness in the mind, more joy is sure to be experienced. We see a Mahapurusha sitting down under some tree, shivering with cold to his very toes, not knowing where his next meal is to come from, yet supremely happy, even hilarious. This joy is from the punya in his heart. Whenever such joys are experienced, one is in the Anandmaya Kosha. The bliss sheath consists of non-apprehension. There, there is therein no positive experience of joy. What is experienced in this state is only the absence of sorrow. Very few in the world know what joy is. All that we know is either sorrow or a slight absence of it, either pain or the absence of it. But real joy, very few of us know real joy is nothing but the experience of Brahma, Ananda Ghana. Real homogeneous bliss, Ananda, is the nature of Brahma. We do not experience that. At best, we experience only a relative absence of agitations. This is called the bliss sheath. Stanza number 208. आनंद में कोशिश से सुसुप्तौ सपुति रुत्कटा स्वपन जागरो उद्दिष्टम दर्शनादिना. The Anandmaya Kosha is fully manifest in the deep sleep state, while in the dream and waking states it is only partially manifest depending upon the sight of pleasing objects, etc. The Anandmaya Kosha is fully manifest in deep sleep. When we are in dreamless deep sleep, we are in the bliss sheath. Our experience in deep sleep is I do not know. I know nothing is our only experience in deep sleep. None of the things that one generally experiences as objects, emotions, and thoughts are there. So, absence of things and utter ignorance are the nature of this sheath. This is called the non-apprehension condition, avidya. Sleep is a state wherein we neither apprehend the objects nor reality. It is a state of sheer non-apprehension. In deep sleep, this Anandmaya Kosha is fully manifest. In the dream and waking conditions, it manifests only a little whenever one perceives things that are pleasant. At the body, mind, and intellect levels, whenever we are in an environment which is conducive to our vasanas, our mental agitations are temporarily quietened. At such moments, we experience a flicker of joy, but this is only a slight expression of the Anandmaya Kosha. This joy depends upon the objects and the circumstances around us. It is called Vishay Ananda, sense pleasure. The joy that we get from sense pleasures is but a drip drop from the ocean of infinite bliss. Stanza number 209. नैवाय मानंदम्ये प्रात्मा सोपाधिकत्वा प्रकृति विकारात् कार्य तव हेतु सुकृत क्रियाया विकार संघात समाहित्वात्. Nor can the Anandmaya Kosha be the Supreme Self because it has attributes which are ever changing. It is a modification of Prakriti, is created as the result of good actions of the past, and it lies embedded in the other sheaths which are in themselves all modifications. Even this Anandmaya Kosha cannot be the Atman for the following reasons. A. Since it has conditionings, so upadhika tvad. It is limited, conditioned, it is not constant. At certain moments, this experience is available and at other moments it is not. So the bliss sheath cannot be ever present self. B. Since it is a modification of nature, prakriter vikrat, it is a subtle expression of matter, the grosser being the desire, the grossest the action. The bliss sheath consists of the causal body made up of vasanas. They too are modification of matter as the BMI, and so the bliss sheath also cannot be the modifications Atma. modificationless Atma. C. It manifests as a result of good and meritorious actions of the past, karyatva hitoh. Hence, it belongs to the realm of the effect, not of the cause. It causes the types of desires and actions, but itself is an effect caused by past actions. As an effect, it cannot be the supreme, which is the cause of all. D. This Anandmaya Kosha is the assemblage of matter modifications, vikara samghata samhitadvad. Vasanas cannot but manifest under conductive circumstances. The tendencies expressed as thoughts. The vasanas can exist only in a medium of matter. So the Anandmaya Kosha is always associated with the assemblies of matter. Naturally, therefore, it is held in a mass of thought vibrations, and this assemblage itself is a modification. Hence, for the reasons given above, the bliss sheath cannot be the Atma. The Atma ever is, never is not. It is immutable. It has an existence even without equipment. Stanza number 210. Panchan पंचानाम अपि कोशानाम निषेधे युक्तितः श्रुते तन्निषेधावधि साक्षी बोध रूपे वशिष्यते. When the five seats have been negated through reasoning based upon authoritative scriptural text, then at the acme of the process, what remains is the witness knowledge absolute, the self. So far, we have inquired into and found the activity, nature, and functions of the five koshas: the food, the vital air, the mental, the intellectual, and the bliss seats. Having inquired into them, we found that none of them could be the reality, and hence we rejected them all. When all these seats are negated, and when an individual crosses the five frontiers intellectually with right argument and full understanding, he reaches the culminating point of this negation. The destination reached by thus negating and finding that the five seats are hollow is the I, the negator. The remainder, the witness of this negation, is of the nature of pure consciousness. Atman, other than the five koshas. योऽयम् आत्मा स्वयं ज्योति पंचकोशे विलक्षण है, अवस्थात्रय साक्षी सन्निविकारो निरंजन है, सदानंद से विज्ञेय सौ आत्म तवेन विपिसिचता. Stanza number 211. This Atman is self-effulgent and distinct from the five seats. It is the witness of the three states, is real, is without modifications, is unsullied, and bliss everlasting. The wise man should realize it as his own self. When we negate all the five seats through close observation, intellection, and meditation, what remains is the self-effulgent Atman. It is known by itself. The self-effulgent is something other than the five seats. It is that illuminating factor which remains a witness of the three states of consciousness: the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep. It is the changeless substratum for all the changes in the BMI. They are all illumined by the Atman, which does not itself undergo any change. The Atman is immaculate, meaning it is untainted by the qualities of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. This changeless ultimate truth is to be known. It is to be known not as an object outside but as one's very own nature. Atma Tavena. The wise student should not only negate the pancha koshas but must come to realize that which is behind them all, not as an object yonder but as his own self. Stanza number 212. What is Atma? Disciple asks a question. Sisya Uvacha. Stanza number 212. Mithyatven nisiddeshu kosusvetesu panchasu sarvabhavam vina किंचिन पश्याम्यत्र हे गुरो विज्ञेयं किमु वस्तुवस्ति स्वा सौ आत्म मना आत्म विपिशिचता. The Sisya asked after negating these five seats as unreal, I find nothing but an absence of everything. O revered teacher, by which entity then should the wise man realize his oneness with the Atman? On the basis that all the five seats are delusions, when I negate them, I find a state of sheer non-entity, a total absence of everything, an empty void, cries out the disciple. This is the despair of the intellect when spiritual ideas are merely thought of by it. This is where the nihilists among the Buddhists reached and cried out that this experience of total annihilation and complete negation of everything is the reality. They insisted that pure non existence is the ultimate truth. And yet, in the above verse, the teacher said, what remains is to be known by the wise man. The disciple questions here, O Guru, when there is a total negation of everything, then at the end I find only a void remaining. I find not there. What then is to be known by the wise man? The Buddhistic ideology is being taken up here in the form of a question from the disciple. The teacher answers in the following verses. Nature of the self discussion. Guru Vacha, stanza number 213. Satyam Muktam Tavya Vidvaini Punosi Vicharane Ahmadi Vikaraste Tadbhavo Yam Penu Sarve Yenanu Bhuyante Yeswam Nanu Bhuyate Tam Atmanam Vidittaram Vidhi Buddhaya So Suksamaya. The Guru answered, rightly have you spoken, O learned one. You are indeed clever in your ability to discriminate. Through an extremely subtle intellect, realize the Atman, the knower, to be that by which all modifications, like the ego as well as their absence during deep sleep, are perceived, but which itself is not perceived. To those who have been following the arguments so far and who have reflected sufficiently upon these ideas, one doubt can naturally come. When everything has been negated, then what is to be known? The Guru replies, encouragingly complimenting the Shishya on his intelligent and reasonable doubt. He says that behind the nought is the knower knowing the nothingness. When the mind and its various modifications, the ego, etc., have been totally negated, That which would then remain is that by which all other things are experienced by the ego during its existence. When all the five kosas have been negated, what remains? Nothing. Right? But who is knowing that there is nothing? I. Who is this I? It is this I factor, the subject, which the teacher is trying to indicate, that by which you are able to experience the various emotions and thoughts of the mind and the intellect, but which by itself cannot be experienced, that is to be realized, that which you had never experienced while you were entertaining thoughts and feelings, but because of which you had all your experiences, that is, in fact, yourself who knew them all. This is to be experienced and known. Come to know that knower of everything, the principle of knowledge in whose presence all knowledges are rendered possible. How should I know that? Buddhaya, through intellectual discrimination. Can I know that with my intellect? Certainly emphasizes the teacher. How inquires the Shishya with an intellect made very subtle. So Sukshamaya Buddhaya is the confident and precise reply. With the gross intellect we see gross things, grosser the intellect, grosser the vision. Our intellect at this moment is so gross, so full of sensuality that we no more see a woman going along. We only see lust moving on legs. When the mind is made a little subtle, you see beauty going a little more subtle and you see a living being. Make it as subtle as that of a philosopher and you will see divinity on the move. How do we make our intellect subtle? Subtle intellect means that intellect which is not running headlong to crash into sense objects. That intellect which is not functioning under the pressure of its vasanas. The intellect which is fully redeemed from their deadening pressures is a subtle intellect. Vasanas are removed through dedicated activity, niskama karma. With such a purified intellect, we will be able to recognize that divine factor which remains when the five kosas have been transcended. Stanza number 215. Tat saksi tat saksikam bhavet tat devena bhuyate kasya apan anubhutarthe Saksitvam no pujyate, that which is witnessed by something else has the latter as its witness. When there is no entity to witness a thing, we cannot say that it has been witnessed at all. The student might not think, all right, then I am the witness. That is, the consciousness is the witness of everything that is happening. So the Guru now clarifies the idea already expressed by him for fear that the subtle suggestions hinted at by him could be misconstrued by not yet disciplined intellect of the student. We can say a thing is a witness only when it is experiencing something, but when there is no experience at all, the Atman cannot even be called a Saksi. A witness is with reference to some definite sets of experiences. In the realm of world consciousness, when it is having the experience within and without, it can be called as a witness. Then it can be a witness of things happening. But when all the happenings are removed, there cannot be any witnesshood. The witness itself becomes the reality. That which was a witness while things were happening is itself recognized as the pure nature of absolute truth. Stanza number 216. असौ सवसाक्षिको भावो यतः सवेना अनुभूयते अतः परम स्वयं मम स्वयं साक्षात प्रत्यगात्मान चेतरः. This Atma is a witness of itself, for it is realized only by itself. Hence, the Atman itself is the supreme Brahma and nothing else. The consciousness, the Atma, can only be said to be a self-witness, Savasakshi. We cannot say that it is a witness save with reference to the parade of experiences within and without. As long as there is the world and the sun, one can say that the sun is the illuminator of the world, but if the world itself is wiped out by some cosmic convulsion or collision, the sun can no longer be said to be the illuminator of the world itself being not there to be illumined by the sun. Similarly, the consciousness is a witness of all that happens at the body, mind, and intellect levels. When the body, mind, and intellect as equipments are no more functioning, there can be neither inner nor outer experiences. When the self cannot be the Sakshi, what can it witness? All that can be said is that it realizes itself. Sava Sakshi. This Atman itself is the Supreme Self. This life in each one of us is the same life everywhere in the whole universe. The realization that the self in me is the self everywhere is not a different process of realization. After experiencing the self in me, I need not take up another sadhana to realize the self everywhere. When I move towards the self, the pluralistic phenomenal world of perceptions suddenly ends, and where it ends, there is the experience of consciousness alone, which is the witness of itself. It is a peculiar experience. Unlike all other experiences, it can be had now here in this very body. With the body, mind, and intellect, we get experiences of things other than ourselves within the web of subject object relationships, where the subject and the object have merged to become a homogeneous one, a knowledge wherein there is no object for knowing other than the self. There we have to admit that this knowledge, jnana, knows itself. Here the subject and the object have become one and the same. What is called the experience of Brahma is becoming Brahma. When a dreamer wakes up, he becomes the waker. Similarly, the limited individuality at that moment becomes Brahma, and so there is not even the role of a self-witness Swasakshi. Stanza number 217. जागृत स्वप्न सुषुप्तिषु सफुटतरम योऽसौ समुज्जृम्भते प्रत्यगुप्तया सदा सदाहं हमिन्यन्तः स्फुरन्कधा नानाकारविकारभागिन इमान् पश्यन्हन्दिमुखान् नित्य आनन्दचिदय आत्मना स्फुरित तं विद्वि सौमेतं हृदि that which clearly manifests itself in the waking, dream, and deep sleep states, that which is perceived inwardly in various forms by the mind as a series of unknown impressions of the ego, which witnesses the ego, the intellect, etc., which are of different forms and modifications, which is felt as existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. Know this Atma within your heart as your own self. That is to be realized in one's own heart. The nature of that is being explained in this verse. The Atma is clearly manifest in the waking, dream, and deep sleep states. That one in whose presence all experiences at all times throughout life are taking place is the self in us, the consciousness which illumines the objects of the world in my waking state and the experiences within during my dream state, and also the absence of things during my deep sleep state is the self in me. This self which illumines the experiences in all three planes of consciousness is to be very clearly known and experienced. The subject illumines the objects outside. The subject can be recognized and inside in the deeper recesses of the personality as the ever expressing I, the individuality. The I am is the factor by whose grace our experiences within and without are made possible. The one reality illumining the various types of experiences at the various personality levels and ever expressing itself as I. Deep within is one's real nature, which is to be realized. The diverse forms and their modifications are cognized through the intellect as the individual's knowledge. We say, I know, I experience, etc. It is that consciousness which is experiencing through the intellect the various types of vicissitudes and their changes. When these differences of objects and their changes are transcended, this great reality can be cognized in itself in its pure nature as the self in all. When I start a sincere inquiry into this great reality, I am compelled by the very nature of the inquiry to withdraw from all my perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. What then remains is eternal, changeless bliss. This existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute, Sat, Chit, Ananda is to be realized in one's own heart. Stanza number 218. घटोत्गे बिम्बितं बिम्ब मालोक्यमूढो रविमेव मन्यते तथा चिदाभास उपाधिस्थं भ्रान्तेः मिथ्यैव जडोऽभिमन्यते. The fool, on seeing the reflection of the sun in the water in a jar, considers it to be the sun itself. So too the fool, through delusion, identifies himself with the reflection of the chit caught in the intellect and considers it to be the I, his own identity. Anyone who cries out, "The sun has fallen into a bucket of water on the veranda," is indeed a fool. Those who consider themselves fallen into the PFT are equally foolish. In both cases, it is only the reflection. The sun is reflected in the water, and consciousness plays upon the thoughts in the mind. This reflection of reality upon the thoughts is called Chitabhasha. It is the consciousness playing upon the thoughts and dancing to their rhythm, just as the reflected sun in the bucket dances when the waters are disturbed. I say, I am agitated, I am bad, I am good. What is this I? It is the Chitabhasha, the reflected consciousness. This is the PFT, the consciousness functioning through my BMI equipment. Once you understand that the sun is in the heavens, then let the sun in the bucket be broken into a thousand pieces. You are not worried about the future existence of the sun. Only an insentient fool who considers the reflected sun to be the real one will worry about its safety when he actually sees the sun in the bucket shattered to a thousand pieces. I was looking into a lake and admiring my charming form when suddenly my reflection broke into pieces. Will I be foolish enough to weep and die, saying I am broken? I understand that it is my reflection only. If I have not forgotten myself, I can watch the reflection and enjoy whenever the waters are rippled by the breeze and my reflection consequently gets corrugated. I shall laugh at the ugliness of my reflection and still remain unaffected. But if a fool has forgotten himself and has identified himself with his own reflection, he will suffer when he directly perceives himself to be squeezed out of shape in the restless waters by some cruel breeze created by an unmerciful and blind God. Stanza number 219. Ghatam jalam tadgat mark bimbam vihaye sarvam vinirikste tarkah tatastha एतत्तीत्रतया भवभासकः स्वयं प्रकाशो विदुषा यथा तथा. The intelligent man leaves aside the jar, the water, and the reflection of the sun in it and sees the self luminous sun. So too the wise realizes the self luminous reality which illumines these three and recognize it as independent of them all. When we perceive the reflected sun in a jar of water, there are three things: the jar, the water in the jar, and the reflection of the sun in it. As long as our attention is on the reflection, the real sun is not perceivable. In order to see the sun, we will have to lift our eyes high up from the jar, the water, and the reflection. In the sun, there is no jar, no water, and no reflection. These three are symbolical examples to help us understand the play of the self. This is called tatastha lokshana. You know the sun to be without the jar, the water, and the reflection. If you are told these, the house on which the crow is sitting is Sri Gopal's residence, then every time you pass by, you don't look for the crow, do you? Once you know the house, the crow becomes dispensable. In this case, the crow is only a convenient, temporary, extraneous factor which helped in the first instance to distinguish Gopal's house from the array of all other houses. This method is called Tatastha Lokashana. The crow is no part of the house, but it helps us to distinguish a particular house. The crow is Tatastha. Once you know the sun, you will understand that it is the illuminator of the jar, the water, and the reflection. Nobody need illumine the sun. It is self-effulgent. It is its own light. In the light of the sun, all other things are illumined. Similarly, the wise man realizes the self. Apply the analogy subjectively to your own life and contemplate jar, the body, water, the thoughts, the reflected sun, the ego, the sun in the heavens, the supreme reality which illumines all these. Stanza number 220. Deham dhiyam चित प्रतिबिंबम एवं विसर्जय बुद्धौ निहत्तम गुहायाम दुष्टारम आत्म आत्मान खंड बोधम सर्वप्रकाशम सद्दूली लक्षणम. Stanza number 221. नित्यं विभुं सर्वगतं सुसूक्ष्मं मन्त्रबहिः शून्ये मन्य अन्य आत्मने विज्ञाय सम्यग् निजरूपमतेत पुमान् विपापम्मा विरजो विमृतुः. Stanza number 222. विशोक आनंद घनो विपश्चित स्वम कुतस्तिचन्न विभेति कश्चित् नान्योऽस्ति पंथा भवबन्धा मुक्ते बिना सवतत्वा अगम mumukshu. So too, leaving aside the body, the intellect and the reflection of chit in it, are realizing in the cave of the intellect the witness, the self, which is knowledge absolute, which is the cause of everything, which is distinct from the gross and the subtle, which is eternal and omnipresent, all pervading and supremely subtle, which is without exterior or interior, which is the one self. By fully realizing this, one becomes free from sin, blemish, death, and grief, and becomes the ocean of bliss. Being illumined, he is not afraid of anyone. For him who seeks liberation, there is no other path to break away from the bonds of transmigration than realizing the truth of his own self. The analogy given in the previous verse is elaborated in these three verses and exhaustively explained. As said above, the sun in the heavens can only be seen when one's attention is diverted from the pot, the water, and the reflection of the sun in it. Similarly, in our subjective life, when the attention is turned away from the BMI, we can realize Brahma, the reality. Diverting the attention from the body, the intellect, and the reflection of chit in it, come to experience the supreme reality which is in the cave of the intellect. In the cave of the intellect means that which is not even the intellect, but that which is the essence in the intellect. Therefore, the self is that which is the intelligence in the intellect. What is to be seen in the cave of the intellect? Drashtaram, the seer, not the seen. The seer without the objects seen, meaning that one which illumines everything, which is your very own self. Atmanam, in your own self. What is its nature? This is exhaustively discussed now. Of infinite knowledge. Akhand Bodham, that because of which all other knowledges are possible, is called pure knowledge. This is the objectless awareness. It is knowledge which is unbroken, akhanda, not the knowledge of things, but the knowledge which illumines all other knowledges. Ever effulgent, sarva prakasham, illumining everything and also the absence of things. It ever is, never is not. Neither has it form nor is it formless. Sad asad vilakshanam, neither gross nor subtle, it is beyond the form and the formless. It is the knowing principle of both the gross and the subtle. The knowledge of the gross and the subtle, of the form and the formless. The knower must be something other than the known. Eternal, Nityam, that which is changeless, not conditioned by time, space, and causality. All pervading, Sarvagatam. Pervasiveness indicates subtlety, the self pervades all and nothing pervades it. Hence the epithet following immediately. Subtler than the subtlest. Suksamam, subtlety is measured by pervasiveness, therefore the term means all pervading, devoid of division within and without. Antar Bahir Sunya, the supreme reality is all pervading and eternal and is one without a second. For such a divine truth, how can there be a within and a without? Within and without of what? It is homogeneously present everywhere at all times in all circumstances, not different from yourself. Anyam Atmanah, it is not to be recognized as an object existing and functioning somewhere outside. It is not other than the self. We have to identify ourselves with this supreme reality. Having clearly understood this great truth as one's own self, one becomes rid of all mental agitations. When we understand a thing as we understand ourselves, there will be no trace of doubt about it in us. Even if the hundreds of people were to come and tell me that I was Swami Govindananda, will I ever have any doubt as to who I really am? Should such a thing happen, I would say there is definitely something wrong with them all. If many people say something contradictory about any other thing, I may have doubts about it, but never can there be any doubt about myself. So firmly rooted must become the knowledge of the self. This is not merely because the teachers of the Upanishad says so, but because I know it. We must come to live it every moment of our lives. Such a man of merit who has known thus gets rid of all his sins, Papa. Sin is the negative vasana which creates agitations in the mind. Such a man becomes taintless. Even the good vasana should be got rid of. Vasanas, good and bad, both are taints in the personality. In Brahma, the reality, even good vasanas are disturbances from the standpoint of supreme peace. Parama Shanti, even merit punya is relatively bad Asian Papa. He becomes free from death, vi mrityu. Death means the principle of change. His experiences are thereafter not through the body, mind, and intellect. These equipments are constantly changing. Therefore, the experience gained through the BMI are not permanent. Every such experience must die. The man of realization lives not upon these finite experiences, hence he is free from change. When one has realized the infinitude, he no more experiences the world through these equipments. So he has no experience of finitude. He is free from all vasanas, negative and positive. He no more lives in the realm of the mind. Indeed, his experience is of the infinite alone, without any grief. Visokaha, never can any sorrow ever reach him. The body, the mind, and the intellect are the three cancerous ulcers that pour forth the pus of sorrow into life. When these three are transcended, there can be no more agitations or disturbances. The pauseless calm and unbroken serenity of the pure Brahma, the Absolute, is no more affected by anything in life. Not only is there no pain, but there is a positive joy, ananda ghana. A passive state of the no pain condition is not the state of spiritual realization. In deep sleep with a bottle of whiskey under chloroform or while swooning, also there is no pain. In these cases, neither is there any pain nor is there any lasting joy. But spiritual realization is a state in which not only are you affected by the imperfections and sorrows of the BMI, but you experience the infinite as a homogeneous mass of everlasting happiness. Anandagana. At the BMI level, experience of a homogeneous mass of happiness is not possible. All experiences at our present level of consciousness are because of some object. The pure bliss, Ananda Ghana, is objectless. The self-illumined sage Vipaschit is he who has known all that is to be known. There is nothing more for him to know. He therefore has no fear at all. At the BMI level, there will always be a fear for security. Security of ideas and emotions, health and objects of attachment. A man who has transcended the BMI level has no fear whatsoever at any time, at any place, under any situation, other than knowing the essential reality which is the core of one's personality. There is no path for liberation from the bondage of becoming. There is no other way to get out of the entanglements of change. Those seekers who have a burning desire for liberation must try to know their real essential nature through a direct and immediate experience. Stanza number 223. Brahma भिन्नत्व विज्ञानम भवमोक्षस्य कारणम येना दिव्येमानंदम ब्रह्म संपद्यते बुद्धि. The cause for liberation from transmigration is the realization of one's identity with Brahma. By means of this, wise men attain Brahma, the one without a second, the bliss absolute. Theoretical book knowledge is called Jnanam, but a full subjective experience is called direct knowledge, Vijnanam. It is not a mediate knowledge, it is an immediate knowledge. The personal experience of one's identity with Brahma, the experience that the self in me is the self everywhere, is the cause for liberation from the phenomenon of becoming. The experience of the merger of the life in me with the life universal alone can remove the bondage of transmigration. We at present have the knowledge, jnanam, that the life in us is the life manifesting everywhere. We know it from books. We have a vague intellectual appreciation of it. We can even convince others. But personal experience, Vijnanam, is not there. Brahma, the life spark in each one of us, is one without a second and is of the nature of all bliss. A man discriminative intellect alone can realize his spiritual identity. A dreamer only when he wakes up can realize the non-dual without a second waker in him. A bliss in duality is known to us all. The bliss arising out of the enjoyment of objects other than us, sense pleasure, is known to us all. But the bliss of realization is not because of any objects. It is Brahma Ananda, the very nature of Brahma. Wise men experiencing this bliss of the self, which is the self present everywhere, transcend all possibilities of transmigration. Stanza number 224. ब्रह्मभूतस्तु संसर्तयि विद्वाना वर्तते पुनः विज्ञात व्यमतः सम्यक ब्रह्मा भिन्न आत्मानः. No more does one return to the world of transmigration after having become of the nature of Brahma. One must therefore strive to realize one's identity with Brahma. Become Bhutam. Brahma Bhutam is an idiom used in the Gita. One who has become of the nature of Brahma. At present we are but masses of matter, Bhutam. It is like a river which flows into the ocean and there comes the ocean itself. When an individual realizes his identity with Brahma, the Jivahood, Jiva Bhutam, becomes the Brahmahood, Brahma Bhutam. Such an individual never returns to this world of births and deaths. He does not come back to live in the world of time, the world of change. Even if he does, he knows that they are all in him, not he in them. Therefore, this is to be personally experienced. One has to be established in the experience of Brahma. Stanza number 225. Satyam Jnana Anantam Brahma Vishuddham Brahm Savtah Siddham Nitya Anandai Karsam Pratyak Bhinnam Nirantaram Jayati. Brahma is existence, knowledge, absolute, extremely pure, transcendental, self-existing, eternal, indivisible, bliss, not essentially different from the individual jiva and with no differences within or without. It is ever victorious. Terms indicating consciousness are given in this verse. They are repeated many times in the textbook. A correct knowledge of these terms help us in meditation. truth or existence, Satyam, that which remains the same in the three periods of time, past, present, and future, is called truth. Knowledge, Jnanam, the consciousness because of which all other knowledges are possible. This is knowledge itself, not knowledge of a thing. Endless, Anantam, endless because it is eternal and because it is the truth. Also endless because it is without any beginning, so it is absolute. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. This is the Upanishadic definition of truth. Truth, knowledge, absolute, that which is permanent and endless and functions in the intellect as the knowing principle is the supreme reality. It serves only as one blazing consciousness at all times, extremely pure, Vishuddham, transcending all matter vestures. A thing is said to be pure or dirt free only when there is no other thing in it than itself. In its subjective application, the term comes to mean a person without vasanas, transcendental, param, meaning it transcends the BMI. When the BMI is transcended, there is naturally no PFT and hence no OET also. What remains is pure infinite consciousness alone, the one without a second, self-existing, Savtaha Siddham. No instrument is necessary to know it. It is known by itself. It is self-effulgent, it being the knowledge in the light of which all other knowledges are possible. To know this knowledge, no other knowledge is necessary. The nature of Brahma is said to be the essence of bliss absolute. Nitya Anand Eka Rasa. If asked about the nature of Brahma, all that one can say is it is of the essence of bliss, not bliss. The essence of bliss transcends even bliss. The bliss joy arising out of sense contacts cannot be bliss unless the enjoyer is conscious of it. This bliss that we ordinarily experience in the midst of objects is not of one homogeneous nature. Ekarasa, it is of varying intensities. The bliss of Brahma is of one essence. It is one continuous experience of unbroken eternal bliss, not different from the individual soul. Pratyak Abhinam. Brahma is not anything other than the self. It is the very Atma, the self ever present in every one of us. Ever victorious, Jayati, it gloriously lives in the bosoms of all. It wins victories over all other layers of matter which must in their finitude decay and perish. So I complete this video at this stage. Next video will start with stanza number 226, all manifestation of absolute. Thank you. Namaskar.